I shall try and make this this exciting. When we, by the way, thank you all for wearing the lanyards. I've taken mine off now, but that's our company, eQ, and it's eQube as our platform. And I'm going to just talk about how this is helping people today realize some of their life cycle management challenges. And I use that term very carefully. I don't put the P in life cycle management. I certainly don't take the P out of life cycle management. That would be rude. But the point being, it's not just product. Nowadays, you start hearing all sorts of things about service, asset, et cetera, et cetera. So it's looking at that holistic nature of what we do. People talk about digital twin, digital threads, everything else. How do we realize it? If you were just in Matthew's presentation just now, you heard about him getting those excellence in execution. He actually put on his slide, I don't know whether you noticed it said Excel in execution. And that's one of the things that we pick out, because I imagine a number of you have got Excel right in your execution. In fact, we'll just do a little bit of a straw poll. And you need to be careful how you answer this. So is there anybody in here not using Excel for some part of their business process today? That's very, all right, and we'll ask Mo as well. Are you using Excel in your business process today, Mo? Well, okay. All right, okay. So if you'd have answered yes, that would have made my job very easy for the next half hour, because I'd have stepped down and you could actually carry on, because you'll have solved the little problem that lots of enterprises have. So let's get into this. The Economist came up with this data deluge, the world's most valuable resource now. It's the new oil, data. Okay? Data absolutely is in amongst all of us in everything that we do. You see there's a little to-do list in there. These slides, by the way, are all available as takeaways. If you do want to take a photo, let me know, because you can have my best side. I'll actually just go and hide behind here so you don't get me in the picture. But by all means, take photos if you wish, but the slides are available. But if data's the new oil, do we need to be a bit careful with it? Because oil is actually a very volatile substance. You see here, that's Deepwater Horizon, Piper Alpha. I put these up because that's actually my background. I was gas turbines through and through. I'm an engineer by trade. I'm not a software person. I work for a software company, but I took the opportunity to join this company to try and help other organizations realize the platform to actually solve some of those issues that are around about data. And that actually goes for every single one of our team here. There's 4 of us here. Ross over there worked for Balfour Beatty. Jan at the back there is from Siemens Energy. And right at the very back, our newest recruit, Adrian, which I could have gotten come up to speak as a customer, because Adrian joined us from Dyson just last week. Okay? By the way, we don't go around the planet engaging with customers, then sealing people. They come willingly through all sorts of circumstances. But what we've got here is oil at source to oil at end use in terms of how it's been derived to actual product. Extremely volatile. So if we're now all about fast data and instant gratification, I'll tell you a little story, and it goes along this sort of picture here that everybody is now walking along or looking at phones. There's probably somebody actually on the phone somewhere or hand on the phone ready, because there might be something instant that I need to actually deal with. I was in India at the beginning of the year, and it saddened me that I was in a lift coming down early morning. The lift stopped at a floor below where I was. 2 kids walk in like this, just walk into the lift, don't look at the buttons. They're like that all the way down to the bottom floor. They didn't know where it was stopping, and then they walk out and they carry on, because they are just so obsessed with whatever it is streaming through here. So this instant, there you go. It's got the phone already. There's something going on that's important. Okay? So is fast data or instant gratification really what we need? Every time we do something, people say, oh, but what about the performance? I need to put it in a data lake so it's fast. Yeah, but then that's not actually a single source of data anymore, is it? It's a replication, a duplication. Data lakes, are they the answer? Is it fast data? Does it get contaminated? Is it a swamp? People call them as puddles or whatever else. But does that really give you the right information that you need? One of the PLM vendors also spoke about better decisions faster as one of their strap lines. Our challenge is if you're not using data throughout as its source, from its executive source, or in a very, very controlled way, Are you making worse decisions even quicker? It's that instant gratification for data actually giving you more problems, and you're making mistakes that are then costly downstream. One of my colleagues, in fact, Jan pointed this out to me the other day, so I went and researched it. 9/11, terrible event, as we all know. But there was information that's now come out of the inquiry that 2 of the government bodies had actually got information that may have actually given a clue of what was going on. But because they didn't share data effectively, there was an issue in that that didn't get through to the right places, and something awful was actually, could have been averted. And this little thing here is close to my heart. I spend a lot of time working with the aerospace defense industry, and we follow closely various events that go on. 737 MAX, I think everybody's heard of that and the challenges that they've been having. Now, we don't know what's been going on there, but I would imagine data and availability of what's going on, traceability and compliance and otherwise, if you start listening to some of the stories and the anecdotal evidence that's coming out, there's a data issue in there that could have played a big part. MBSE, model-based systems engineering, was mentioned earlier on in a couple of the presentations. It could have played a significant part in there to actually address some of those failures. And have you seen what I can do in Excel? Because that's actually at the heart of most people's organizations today, if we're really honest. And how do we make sense of that and start that orderly progression away from it? So that's where we come in. DaaS, data as a service, probably a term that some of you are familiar with, and some of you are going, well, I've come along to find out what that really means and what EQ are doing about that. So let me just give you a little bit of background of EQ, because you've probably never heard of us. We are a global organization headquartered out of the US, and as you can see, we've got many very high marquee customers as part of our portfolio. This isn't complete, but it's a significant number. We grew up in the areas of like Lockheed Martin, BAE Systems, and others, and we're very proud to be operating with the customers that we do today. They come to us in many respects to look at analytics. When I'm talking about analytics, I'm talking about industrial analytics around the PLM platform. But what I also look at is migration, large-scale migrations from legacy systems, from the hundreds or thousands of Excel systems that they have in their organization. And in particular now, and I really look at what Matthew said on the MHI Vestas thing, is looking at how they can create what we call for-purpose applications, simplified views over complex back-end enterprise solutions, your ERPs, your PLMs, etc., all extremely powerful in what they do, but very, very intense as a product. Too much information on screen at once. So we look to actually simplify that user experience by creating what we call for-purpose applications over the top. So to summarize that, excuse me, the eQube platform is actually a software solution that forms this integrated network of connections to your sources of data, keeping information in the system of record or migrating it to the correct place, safe and secure, any speed, any frequency. When we talk about speed, it's the speed of data, how much data is actually throughput at any one time, any application, any format, to actually make sense of information for the end user. So I'd imagine a number of you are trying to answer questions that involve some of these sort of things. Data as a service, service bus. We saw a great presentation. Did anybody see the Nev's presentation earlier on? Yeah? Really, really good. Very, very sorry story, the demise of Saab, etc. But what a great approach they took. We're going to start from scratch, greenfield, and actually create a complete integrated solution. And it's interesting because I was looking at his slide, and it's like the slide we use as the story about what it is we do. A digital backbone with loosely coupled applications, then creating enterprise analytics. And they were able to describe that exactly. So they've done what they would choose to do if you were starting again. How many of us would sit there and say, do you know what, that's what I want? So my little claim here is, well, we can help you on that journey. And we do that by consolidating this into one digital backbone. Now, some of you in the room have actually got this digital backbone in your organizations today, and others that we're engaged with that are here are also at some point on this journey with us. But what we're talking about here, this MI, Migration Integration Backbone, is a process framework. So business process modeling sits in there. That's where all the logic about how you will interact with your systems and your data actually live. Not in these connections, these little blue arrows we quaintly call them now. They are our intellectual property. That's where we invest our time to make sure that whatever we do in that API gateway between the application and the process modeler is code-free, as in configuration. We don't actually write code in there. We don't write code in the application. We actually create an API connection to interact with those applications as if you were a user. And there's two obvious reasons why you would do that. Most organizations spend tens, if not hundreds of millions on PLM, develop huge security and business models, and then plus the investment that they've made in their ERP, plus then the investment in all the other enterprise solutions that they're operating with. Do you want to then have a strategy that pulls all of that out of there into a lake or into another system and then actually recreate that security again? And generally the answer is not. And when I saw, again, on Matthew's presentation just now, where they've got all those solutions, and then he says, and then we bring it out and we put it in a data lake and put Power BI on top of it for visualization. My question, which I'll go back to him, is what are you doing about security there, or does it not matter on what you're actually pulling out? So these are the questions that you need to ask yourselves. What is it that I'm doing when I bring this data out because I want fast data, I want quick visualizations, I want people to create everything really, really quickly? Does security matter? Because you've just invested stacks of money in your PLM solution or your ERP solutions, et cetera, et cetera. So ask yourself that question first. Do I need fast data, or do I need the correct data to make the right decision in a timely manner? And the reason I make that discrepant or that change or the distinction between fast data and data when it's going from source, if you're taking data from source, there's an overhead to that. It takes time to negotiate with your PLM system to release the data. I worked with an old colleague years ago, and he referred to PLM as a wolf system, W-O-L-F, wolf. And I said, what does that mean? He says, written once, lost forever. The data's gone in, and now I can't find it. How do I get it back? And this is where we, again, come in trying to bring that data to the forefront in a safe, secure manner, honoring your actual rights and controls. At the top of this is what we call actionable insight. We manufacture a BI tool. It's eQube-MI, and that is really based around blending together your enterprise data in a PLM context. It's not a visualization tool. It's not a Tableau. It's not a Kulik. They're viz tools working with very ordered, effectively structured Excel or database data in the main, or you invest in a specific connector to get the data out. Here, we're using this platform, and whether it's enterprise apps, whether it's legacy, you notice I've got Excel bang in the middle as at the heart of the organization. And then we go over to the new data, the sensory data. This data that comes now into your things like ThingWorks has been mentioned today. Fantastic solution. MindSphere from Siemens. There's a number of these IoT-based platforms that have apps built on them that have got data that you can exploit. Closing the gap was another message that came out just now in the previous presentation. I've got this information, this streaming data that's coming out of manufacturing, stacks of it. I've got all this stuff about how my products operate in the field. How do I bring that back into the design cycle, into the analysis, the early analysis of the next product? And this is where we're marrying together your streaming data with your enterprise data to allow you to then be invasive in the workflows. I'm about to consume a part in a design, yeah? So I'm sat in my PLM solution. I don't have service lifecycle management in my PLM solution today. So I'm just going to say, yeah, I'll reuse that in this solution. What we do is then interfere with that workflow to say, hang on, this has had so many in-service issues in the last 3 months. Are you sure you want to use that part? Equally, you could look into the supply chain. This is on shortage. You've got no stock. However, there are these equivalents. By doing shape search, by doing metadata search and blending the data together across the ERP solution and the PLM solution, They're the types of issues that we look to resolve. And then to add to that next level, again, from the Vestas presentation, creating a simplified user interface. Because not everybody wants to be an expert of using SAP or using PLM or using any of the other enterprise systems. They actually just want to consume the simple information and trust where that data is coming from. Okay? And that's, again, one of the deliveries from the platform. Now, years ago, I was a PLM consultant. Actually, years ago, I was a PLM customer, working for what now is Siemens Energy. It was Alstom and just became Siemens when I was there. And this is a picture I saw all the time. I used to go to all the PLM events and whatever else, and this picture came up time and time again, and I've seen an iteration or a version of this picture while I've been here today. And a typical journey. You're investing lots and lots of money in your PLM or PDM or EDM or CAD or whatever else you would call it. I come from when it was a Data General was the first CAD system where you had to climb into it and there was a refresh screen with lots of flashy buttons and things like that. And that was CAD back in those days. What actually may happen is you start getting around that config and change and you start going to true PLM. And then other initiatives start, or that lack of adoption happens. And I go back again to what Matthew was talking about. Not having the adoption in the organization and not driving it is going to be a problem, an Achilles heel in your realization of the benefits of PLM. And what happens then is your benefit from your initial investment drops off. And new initiatives start, counter initiatives. Someone says, let's do a recompete on PLM and we'll switch from one platform to another. These things are happening today. But what's actually then happened is your initial investment has actually dropped off. So what we're saying is, how about we drive forward through that whole life cycle thing and actually acknowledge that PLM may not be monolithic. It doesn't just exist in one system. It's actually going across all those other verticals. You're looking at your ERP, you're looking at your SLM, etc. Is it goes across there. You bring software into the play now with asset lifecycle management, or application lifecycle management rather. You bring all those things together. That's your true lifecycle management, to my earlier point. That then drives that benefit curve back up and starts maximizing the investment that you've made in your systems of record. So through migrations, through integrations, through data as a service solutions, through better user interfaces to allow people to get what they want as a purpose or for purpose for them, that's a big opportunity to really exploit that value area. And that's where we focus a lot of our effort nowadays. I say, through integrations first and foremost, but integration is a migration waiting to happen if it's a legacy system. But then you can do that migration in an orderly manner. We talk about orderly migrations. Getting something working for everybody, they're all using the same interface. We stop some of the chaos going on with the Excel madness, and then slowly behind the scenes, you start removing the Excel while leaving the user interface the same. Everybody's saying, that's okay, I'm all right. I now know that I'm authoring in the system of record. Anyone asleep? Everyone's asleep. Right, realizing a digital thread. So this is a reality check. This represents a picture that we've sort of drawn together from a number of organizations and said, you know what, this is a fairly common theme. And this is really what goes on. And they're just arbitrary around here, but this is PLM with a flow of data going off to MES and to a couple of unknown systems because they're there and we're not quite sure what they do, but there's someone who's got a spreadsheet somewhere that we're feeding. And then there's a mainframe from 1855, there's some exports. Data's everywhere. And how do we actually start to bring sense to this? Do we put something in the middle to actually integrate that together properly, rather than all these bespoke interfaces? And then do we start to retire what is a whole host of legacy and consolidate on perhaps 4 systems? Most people, I would imagine in here, have got probably a strategy that shows PLM, ERP, service lifecycle management, perhaps manufacturing execution. Probably they're the 4 things that we aspire to. The reality is a picture like this. So how do we transpose or move from this chaos to actual reality of being able to realize a simplified solution. Do those greenfield, or aspire to that greenfield approach that went on. Oops. So, how do we see it happening today? And if anyone's not doing this, again, raise your hand, because you can carry on the presentation at that point. So there is an awful lot of export goes on today in business. It's just the way of the world. Does it have to be? No, it doesn't. And this is what we call data virtualization, or using data as a service. So if we're on an export base, I want to ask a few questions. For example, how do I get a dynamic costed BOM? True cost of a BOM as a design will iterate. And I could get it with an export from one and an export from another. I was in one organization, said, we want to do this with PLM. Can we connect your ERP? And they went, no. Why not? Well, ERP we can't touch. It's unstable, you can't touch it, the business runs on it. But you design products, the business runs on that. You want a costed BOM. Give us an export of your BOM, they said, and then we'll give them the export of the cost. We'll blend them together in an Excel, and you'll get your costed BOM. Yeah, but the BOM changes every day. Oh, well, we'll do it every day. But it takes us 24 hours to get the export, so you'll get it at the end of the week. All right. Can we connect your data warehouse? Because we noticed you've got a data warehouse. No. Why not? That's really unstable. It will fall over tomorrow if you look at it too hard. Okay, we're not really getting what the business needs. And that's a true story, okay? I'll leave the company name out of it because it's unfair, but that happens. So, export, it's probably as good as we're going to get in that case. But I've probably got SAP. I've used SAP and Teamcenter because we see this quite a bit. How do I populate SAP with the new data from Teamcenter? Yeah, there's peer-to-peer connections, but it's not just about SAP and Teamcenter or PLM and ERP. There's a whole load of other systems that need linking together. And a number of other questions go on. Most recently, I'm involved in this thing about fracas, failure and failure reporting and corrective action, or corrective action and preventative action. That's all about collecting data from downstream and bringing it back into the design life cycle. With this type of world, it gets very, very confused. And it actually ends up more like this. We've got copies of data everywhere. I think it's this one coming from a legacy database that I need to blend with something else. No, I've got the wrong one. Do I now make a wrong decision? Because I've gone after fast data, because I'm really looking for this rapid information, so I'll just get exports and do it, because I can't get it out of my IT groups or my IT systems. It's tough. And Mo, you mentioned this morning that some of those challenges that you've seen are making sense of the data. And it's getting away from this and actually really trying to blend everything together to allow you to make those real decisions that have got huge cost impacts. I think you were talking about some of the benefits. It's quite staggering what can be achieved from the right data. From the wrong data, the message that can go out to the business can be destroying. It can bring your program down. So how do I address this? Do I migrate from legacy applications? Do I create apps to make the user experience easier so people don't have to get all the exports all the time? They can go over the enterprise apps, but deal with stuff in an easy way. Excel-like apps, so that they can actually deal with stuff. We've just done this for BSH in Germany, the white goods people. They had SAP and Teamcenter. They didn't like using either. They realized how powerful they were, but they didn't like using them. So we built them an app over the top that lets them edit or consume and edit SAP and Teamcenter data without knowing where it goes. But the system itself deals with it, okay? Or the process behind the system. Some of the other things you need to look at there, or that we look at for you, is managing that master data, so that there is movement of data. Processes move across systems. They don't just all live in your PLM backbone. That is the reality of today. The information is absolutely everywhere. If you've got it consolidated into some of your mainstream systems, brilliant, but still you've got interaction between those systems. So creating a good integration that flows across all of them and not just between one or two is critical. That allows you to then leverage the underlying security model and business model of those applications, so you now guarantee integrity of the data, okay? And then finally, in that bottom part is you've got issues in the data. Again, it's been mentioned during the sessions today. Repair them, put them right, or flag them to say there is an issue there. Because repairing data is costly, it takes a lot of time, particularly when you've got this sort of legacy. So mark it as suspect and then deal with it, but go after your more frequently moving data and deal with that first. So, would you believe it? It's like it's a sales presentation. There is an answer, and it goes back to the picture that we were looking at earlier on. Virtualization of data, creating that data as a service platform, and creating that backbone to allow you to interact with information in a very intuitive manner is something that can really help you move these things on. When we talk about data as a service, there are mechanisms that we use that can present data as a series of published APIs to you. From all of those masses of systems and data solutions, we can present APIs for people to then consume. So organizations that have got their data scientists and otherwise can collect the data that we broadcast whilst it's still coming from system of record and actually then do analysis and other types of exercises on that. So I've already spoken about the API as a gateway now. So from this particular mass of systems and processes that are going on, an orchestration of processes across that platform, broadcasting those APIs to apps then that can actually consume that data. So here there's a whole raft of UIs. We're actually limitless in the number of UIs that you can actually apply to this. We have our own UI framework. Now there's Mendix, low code, no code, something like that type applications that you can build, and then really leverage the power of the underlying data and systems in those applications. And there's a few applications that we've actually built, and if you've got time, drop by our stand. We've got all sorts of demonstrations on there that you can actually see all of this stuff coming to life. Now, I've got very briefly, a bit short on time because we started late. I might pinch 5 minutes of the coffee break if that's in order. I'll talk about model-based systems engineering. Now, this is a fairly rudimentary view on MBSE and how it can actually be orchestrated between solutions. So these are a lot of the players. It's not all of them, but a lot of the applications that are involved in model-based systems engineering. And if I just skip through this little movie here, what we've got is a for-purpose application, so you're just getting the idea of what we would build that will actually look across the whole digital thread of a model-based systems engineering activity for your electrical, your mechanical, all your firmware, software generation, etc., and give that traceability. So again, it's using this digital backbone as a service to expose the API components, and in this case, we're using Mendix as the application framework. So a little bit of a process flow here. You've got requirements, you've got design, you've got build, you've got digital thread. I appreciate this is dumbed down, but it's done for a reason, just to show that systems can be actually linked together and orchestrate. So you've got a process flow here. You've got a kickoff, you've got requirements signed off, you've got Primavera looking after the whole program, and now you've got process flowing now between your PLM, in this case it's Teamcenter, interaction through the UI, and starting to link together the whole digital thread piece. I'll show you what it looks like. Start off with a dashboard showing you your requirements completion state, your design completion, your build completion. Then you go to the simplified view, rather Excel-like, because people like this tabular Excel view. And now you've got sliding in showing you what's happening behind the scenes. From a project being kicked off, a framework has been created in Primavera. So the data as a service has actually gone into Primavera and actually created that in P6. So the MI framework is actually doing the authoring as if it was somebody on Primavera doing it themselves. Okay? Now we're going to actually kick off a requirement definition. So what it's saying is, okay, there's some specialist is now going to do some work indoors, and I'm actually going to get the output of that and actually drive that through somewhere else. So they go into DOORS next gen, do some definition of a requirement, excuse me, and then that updates the information in Cameo. So now we're in DOORS, add some requirements, it's making some autonomous vehicle, and adding some additional things to that. When that's been authored in there, it's then synchronized or released to the MI process. In this case, it's the MBSE app, so there's a synchronization activity in there. We go back into the MBSE app, and you'll see then that requirements piece has been completed. Again, really simplified, but just showing you that there's a process flow going on behind the scenes. That's now kicked off a define model event. So now we go into Cameo, which is the enterprise architect solution. And you'll notice again in the app, it's very, very simple app, just telling you what's going on, orchestration piece that's happening. And then they'll go and actually do some modeling in Cameo. You'll see in there, just pause that very briefly. The requirements that were actually defined in DOORS Next Gen are already being defined in Cameo. So that's the process in the process designer behind the scenes in MI has actually now populated that particular activity in Cameo. So from a user perspective, nothing had to be done. The framework is there for them to actually go execute. So now they're just doing their Cameo work as an enterprise architect. And they'll start to build that particular model up. But that's actually been generated itself from those high-level requirements in DOORS in the first place. So now they do their modeling work. I'll skip on a little bit for time. So get the modeling in place, associate the functional design, and now we go to this collaboration piece. So the commit and the change to the server, which now actually updates the cloud, and then that will actually build the skeleton framework of code in Bitbucket in this case. So this is now bringing together all your ALM piece and all the other lifecycle elements I was talking about. So switching from this PLM thing, taking the P out of that, and just changing this to lifecycle management. So now we're in JIRA. They're using JIRA as their sprint tool, and taking the software development throughout those gated processes. So now you go into Bitbucket, and would you believe the skeleton code's been generated? Of course, then somebody will be in there doing the rest of the code work. And then finally, they'll go and execute the project. So they're going back into JIRA now to execute the project. And here you can actually then get into this activities are gone in progress, do some work, and then they've completed, and eventually that'll update the solution in P6. So as a takeaway, the process flows in there, just so you've got that. So finally, to recap, data has got the potential to transform a business. But the message from us is make sure that's a positive transformation. The money and the investment that's been made in enterprise class solution runs into tens, hundreds, multiple hundreds, even towards billions of pounds in organizations. I know that firsthand. I've worked in PLM an awful long time, and I've seen that money spent. My message, and I would say this because I'm trying to get people interested in using or exploiting our tools, is invest in the right integration. And quite honestly, from what I've seen, point-to-point integration, whilst it solves a problem, it's very much a sticking plaster, and it causes you different issues downstream. So the total cost of ownership suddenly becomes quite challenging. Protecting our data assets. You saw the volatility of oil and my little analogy between the two, but it's true. Data can be extremely powerful for us, but it can also be extremely dangerous. So I like to use this little thing. I don't know whether I made this up, but I started saying it. I probably pinched it because I do that quite a lot. But it says, I've got data, but I want to convert my data into information that I can use, which then becomes knowledge, so I can make the right decision. I've got pockets of data everywhere, but it's still just data. Unless you can contextualize it and bring it together and blend it, little snippet, and this is my colleague Jan at the back there, and he can tell you more about this. I went and worked with him before Jan came to join us. And there was an organization that says, we've got all this IoT data. Look at this. And they put some graphs up, and there's all this vibration coming off a machine tool. I went, right, so is that good or bad? No, that's not good. The machine tool's not working right. So we just said, okay, at that point there, this time-based series data, what was being built? Don't know. So you may have something in service that was manufactured with a vibrating machine tool, and you don't know. No, because we haven't got that data blended together. Okay, let's talk about that. We can help you. All right, so it's really giving that information and then knowledge about what's going on. Keep it safe and secure, protecting the data assets, and therefore from the system of record. And now I've just added that at the last week. I said the right decisions from the right data in the right context to the right consumer. So this is a takeaway slide, really. What do we deliver as part of our solution to you is end-user-centric apps, multiple system integration, aggregation, federation, combining COTS software with legacy systems and devices, orchestrate enterprise-wide processes across those organizations, this federation of data in context of the end user actions. So this is giving whoever I might be as a service engineer, giving me the data in the right form for me to consume. Or somebody who's sat at the top of an organization going, I don't want all of this massive data. I just want to know, is my factory working or not? Please, just give me that information. Collaboration across networks, partners, and customers. Everyone wants to do that. We're talking to Formula One about that at the moment. They've got to challenge one of the teams and saying, how can you help us actually link together now the supply chain that we're operating in? And they operate at a real speed. We talk about fast data. They're ludicrously fast in the way they want things. However, their problem is still the same. Everybody's got the same problems. That's been mentioned as well. And then this responsible retirement of legacy systems. And finally, the nice flashy charts and whatever else, is creating proper ABI, analytics and BI, across the data. I said that we're not a visualization tool. Sure, we use visualization, but we use that to drill into the information to then perform the action. Every drill down of chart that you get with us takes you to the point of authoring to allow you to do something. Otherwise, it's just a chart on a wall. And that's us. Hopefully that's explained what data as a service is to you. If not, all I've done is bridge the gap between the snooze slot and the cup of tea time, which is about now. So thank you very much and enjoy your tea. Any questions?